young and goofy, scrolling through his phone and seen a Cuban link that's worn by Gucci. Fascinated by gangster shit and trying to get rich or fake it like you got it, so everyone double tap his pick. Depositing fake reality for salary, non-negotiable, overdosing on sociable, quotable, so the locals know that his chain is a movie, that his bitches is bougie, that his activists leaning, that he really unruly. 27 with pocket money and 4 rogue rats, ain't punching clocks but punctuation on where the plug at. Dry snitching and fishing for likes with frequent visits, posting pictures with burners for stripes and recognition, flexing with 4 bands. He smiled for the cameraman, the Instagram is location, his followers tapping in. 3 enemies waiting, 1 bullet, 1 mask. Got his fucking brains blown out over 2 hashtags, you know.
May not always be around, but I don't need you so bad. I need you bad. May not always get in line, but I don't need you so bad. I need you bad.
It's the mop, not the wop. What's going on, good people? We back in here for another one. And this one, oh man, I got something special today. Get on in here, get on in here. Hit that like button on the way in and speak. Today, we're going to be dealing with conflict resolution, y'all. Last week, we talked about rhetoric, logical fallacies, propaganda, basically how people and system, more so the system or systematically collectives use rhetoric to manipulate, misinform, and all these different contortions to get a desired result. So last week we talked about different logical fallacies, and the week before that we talked about how you're probably not a narcissist. And today we're going to bring the conversation to conflict resolution and healthy, constructive conflict resolution. There's a issue where a lot of us fundamentally we weren't taught conflict resolution. We weren't taught a healthy concept of conflict resolution. Oftentimes there's 2 ways that we interface with our conflicts with people when we're in conflict. One is the explosive style where you lash out and you out people, and maybe it culminates in violence. And then there's the passive, or where you shut down all the way, where you stonewall. And I prepared something for you guys, and we're gonna try to unpack this. It won't be too long, won't be long at all. And like I say, we're going somewhere with this, but I want to make sure we take our proper steps Like I said, right now, first I wanted to, well, if you go back to the first episode of Mop Talks, like I say, that one was, let's start at the ground. I wanted to start at the ground level, because people mislabels and this shit where people know what they don't know. You know what I mean? And by that I mean, and it's, people will call you narcissist, or they'll say, oh, you're doing this, or you're a gaslighter or some shit, and they really oftentimes don't have the proper definitions. But that was by design as well. But they don't have the proper definitions to, they don't have the proper definitions to know what the shit even means. But more so, motherfuckers, you don't even, because that's what we're gonna cover today. People's desire to be right or win conflicts. It often overrides logic, reasoning, any of that leads to growth. You know what I mean? Which is what conflict is on a living scale, is what it's about. Every conflict that you come into is an opportunity for you to evolve, for you to grow your mentality, to grow yourself. Because, well, as we're going to explore, conflicts come in a few forms. There are a few types. And we're going to get into that. Actually, I think we're ready to go right now. So look. Oh, one thing. Let me get this in the chat as well. We are teaching from my Substack. I wrote an article. Been working on that for the past week, and that's what we're teaching from today. And I want to make sure I put that in the chat just in case anybody wants to read along. And you can also go and download it or just save it to your files, man. I promise you it'll be beneficial to have. I don't charge you. There is a paid membership on my Substack, but you can get everything for free. You would only pay if you're just trying to support what we do over here. What I do over here. One quick second, y'all. I just want to get this so I can throw it in the chat. Review the post. Sunshine baby, what's going on? And there we go. The Substack is linked in the chat if y'all want to follow along. But with that being said, the exploration of conflict begins with an uncomfortable yet universal shared truth. Most individuals were never formally taught how to navigate disagreements. Instead, the approach to conflict is often inherited, absorbed from the household and communities and relationships that shaped us. For many, this has resulted in one of two inherited blueprints: either an explosive style characterized by raised voices and cutting words, or a pattern of complete avoidance expressed through silence and nonverbal cues. Neither of these are models provides a framework for healthy, intentional resolution. The absence of a constructive guide is a key reason why many stumble when faced with a disagreement, repeating detrimental patterns or overcorrecting to the point of walking on eggshells. This is the purpose of this blueprint is to offer a new way forward, providing a foundational understanding and a practical toolkit for approaching conflict, not as a battle to be won, but as an opportunity for growth, intimacy, and understanding. One second, y'all. All right. So, as I was saying, the distinction between a productive and destructive approach lies in both the process and the outcome. Destructive conflict is a pattern of behavior that includes blaming, stonewalling, and personal attacks, and much more. And these only serve to escalate disagreements and erode the trust that is the foundation of any relationship. This breeds hostility, and it leaves behind emotional scars that can make future disagreements even more fraught. Now, conversely, a constructive approach to conflict avoids personal attacks and instead focuses on finding solutions, aligning different viewpoints to achieve a better outcome. This process is characterized by respectful communication, open dialogue, and a mindset committed to a mutual resolution rather than personal victory. The goal and objective in destructive conflicts is to win the argument, assign blame, and prove the other person wrong. We want to move to finding solutions, understanding the other person's perspective, things that'll strengthen the relationship. See, in destructive conflicts, the communication style is to use personal attacks, like I say, blame, shift, stonewalling, gaslighting, all these different fallacies and passive aggression. But we want to move towards respectful dialogue and a direct expression of needs and a focus on the issues that's at hand. Because you have to consider the impact on the relationships, and not just romantic, but in all. Humans have to interface, and when we interface destructively, it erodes the trust. Like I say, it builds resentment and it creates distance in your relationships. And we want to interface in a way that fosters open communication and builds trust and strengthens bonds. You get what I'm saying? We don't want to be hostile and defensive and volatile. We want to be emotionally regulated, collaborative and balanced. You know what I mean? Instead of kitchen sinking and gaslighting, raising your voices and aggressive gestures, we want to practice active listening, using I statements, as I'll explain shortly, taking breaks and seeking mutual ground. The most profound shift in this new blueprint is a departure from a deeply ingrained win-lose mentality. The historical and social logic of conflict often revolved around a fixed resource base, where one person's gain was seen as another's loss. In this paradigm, conflict becomes a struggle for domination. However, the modern era, with its emphasis on information as an expandable resource, it presents an opportunity for a win-win approach. The challenge for many is not just to learn new communication techniques, but to actively unlearn the fundamental generational perception of what conflict is for. The objective is of a healthy conversation is not to secure victory, but it's to embark on a collaborative process aimed at understanding and repair. This reframing is the true foundation of a new and healthier blueprint. So let's look into building this toolkit. Before engaging in any difficult conversation, it's crucial to equip yourself with the foundational skills that enable productive dialogue. These serve as the pillars of healthy conflict, and it'll transform a tense interaction into an opportunity for genuine connection. The art of active listening. I'm sure you've heard of this before, but active listening is a core competency that goes far behind just hearing words. It's the practice of demonstrating a genuine interest and a deep commitment to understanding another's perspective. It'll require individuals to focus on the speaker rather than mentally preparing a rebuttal or thinking ahead of their own responses. There's several key components to mastering this skill. Not the first, but you want to pay attention. And you give the speaker your undivided attention. It requires more than just making eye contact. It means you put aside the distracting thoughts that you're thinking and listening to the speaker's body language, including facial expressions, their posture, gestures. As we know, nonverbal communication, communication is 90% nonverbal. And you provide feedback. As the listener, your role, your job is to understand the message that's being conveyed. And this can be achieved by reflecting what has been said through paraphrasing, using phrases like so what I'm hearing is, it sounds like you're saying, excuse me. This simple act validates the speaker's feelings and ensures that their message has been received accurately. Asking clarifying questions is also vital to gain a comprehensive understanding of their viewpoint. And one of the last key points of active listening is deferring judgment. Interrupting the speaker or preparing a counter argument while they still talking is a waste of time, and it only serves to frustrate them, and it limits your full understanding. The practice of deferring judgment, it'll allow the speaker to not only finish their thoughts, but it creates a safe and open environment for dialogue. If they can cut you off if you can cut them off while they're talking, then they have the right to cut you off when you're talking. You know what I mean? For us particularly, the practice of active listening carries a particular weight, transcending a simple communication technique to become a profound act of building trust and countering dismissiveness. Furthermore, cultural communication styles such as different uses of eye contact or physical proximity can be misinterpreted by those unfamiliar with certain norms, leading to misunderstandings and further reinforcing conflict. By actively and respectfully listening with the intent to understand, a person can demonstrate that they're not operating under harmful stereotypes or prejudices. The act of listening with the intent to understand, not waiting for your turn to clap back, it becomes a direct counter-narrative to centuries of being unheard and serving. It serves as a powerful tool, y'all. That's how you build rapport. And that's the foundation of honest communication. Another important, what's going on, Piggy? Another important piece of this toolkit is going to be the power of empathy. Empathy is your ability to not just feel sorry for another person, but to genuinely comprehend and share their thoughts, feelings, and perceptions. It's a critical component of active listening and a powerful catalyst for successful conflict resolution. It'll enable the individuals to see a dispute from multiple viewpoints and emotions. By integrating empathy into your conflict resolution process, differences are valued and disagreements are able to be viewed as pathways to mutual growth. Empathy breeds or fosters a safe environment where individuals feel heard and understood. The simple act of validating someone's emotions without necessarily agreeing with their position can go a long way in de-escalating a heated situation and building trust. I can see why you might feel like that, or your perspective is important as well. These things like that acknowledges their experience without passing judgment. And this practice of empathetic communication transforms a potentially divisive conversation into a collaborative process that strengthens relationships and encourages a more meaningful dialogue. This next, now, the transformative I statement. In the midst of conflicts, the natural inclination is to use you statements. These often come across as accusations. It can make the other person feel blamed, judged, or criticized. And this approach is counterproductive and almost always leads to a defensive or angry response, which escalates the disagreement. The solution is to transition from an accusatory you to an empowering I statement. I statements are a fundamental psychological tool that enables an individual to take ownership of your own feelings and communicate their needs clearly and respectfully without placing blame on the other party. This communication style is less threatening and more likely to be heard even when emotions are high. Here's the structure of an I statement. It's simple. Here's the formula. I feel, and you state your emotion. When, and then you describe the specific neutral situation. Because, as you state the effects on your life. And I want, and you state the actions you want taken. I'm gonna give you an example. Say you got a team member. You wouldn't want, a destructive approach would be, you never pull your weight and I have to stay late to finish this report. But when you transition into I statements, it will sound more like, I feel overwhelmed when I have to take on extra work because I'm concerned we won't meet our deadline, and I want to find a way more evenly distributed, a way to more evenly distribute the tasks. You see how that just comes across a whole lot smoother, and you can actually get somewhere with that. Or say you in a situation where you're feeling unheard. The easiest or the most innate thing to say would be, you never listen to me, or you're always on your phone when I try to talk. But try this. I feel unimportant when you're on your phone while I'm speaking because I need to feel heard and seen. And I want you to put your phone away so we can have a productive conversation. You you probably gonna get some honey for that instead of what they say. You use honey, not vinegar. Let's say you got somebody or that's always late, or y'all, you wouldn't want to go like, you're so you inconsiderate. You always making me wait for you. Here's how you structure it. I feel disrespected when we agree on a time and you arrive late because it interrupts my schedule, and I want to set a clear plan for our future meetings. You see how it take a few more words, but effectively you are conveying your feelings in a much more constructive way that is easier to be received. Like I say, those you statements are extremely accusatory. Now I want to get into understanding and overcoming destructive patterns. While foundational skills of the building blocks of a healthy conflict, it's equally important to be able to identify and counter the specific destructive patterns that can derail any attempt at resolution. There's a term called kitchen sinking, as I've mentioned earlier, and that's it's a detrimental habit of you throw everything but the kitchen sink into an argument, and this is where they'll bring up a cascade of past grievances and unrelated issues to divert attention away from the current topic of discussion. In the presence of this cluttered mix of complaints and unresolved issues makes it nearly impossible to address the original concern effectively. This pattern can severely impact relationships by creating a cycle of unresolved conflict and communication breakdowns. Constantly revisiting past issues erodes trust and intimacy, and it leads to a feeling of frustration and defensiveness always. The primary strategy for countering kitchen sinking is to set firm but polite boundaries. An individual can use I statements to gently but firmly bring the conversation back to the present issue. I feel overwhelmed when we discuss old issues, and I want to focus on this one problem for now. That's a great way to redirect it back where it needs to be. One second, y'all. Sorry about that. It's also beneficial to acknowledge their past concerns and promise to address them at a later agreed upon time, thereby showing that the issues will not be forgotten and will be handled in a more productive manner. This is, maybe y'all starting to see it, but that's why last week's episode was about logical fallacies and how rhetoric is used as a tool of manipulation and malicious misinformation. Because now we're getting into the interpersonal conflicts, and you'll see the same tactics that we saw last week on when a company or corporation or government or whatever it is moves to maliciously misinform or gaslight you or do a, speaking of that, I want to touch on gaslighting a little bit more. This week we're gonna call it the assault on reality. Gaslighting is an insidious form of psychological manipulation where a person deliberately attempts to make another person question their own memory, sanity, or perception of reality. This is a tactic often used by abusers to gain and retain control of a relationship by breaking down an individual's self-trust and self-esteem. Gaslighters use a variety of tactics to confuse their targets. Denial being one of them, where they'll deny an event ever happened or a statement was ever made, even when it's direct or concrete evidence of it. And they shift the blame, they attack, and they go on the offensive and put it on another person's credibility or their mental health or their intelligence. And these are the like the ad hominem attacks and the red herrings. And then you have blame shifting, where the perpetrator manages to make the victim feel bad for even bringing up the issue, claiming it was only because of something the victim did first. Oh, how often we see these things in our lives. I mean, individually and collectively. That's all you see on TV these days, and on the internet more so. For those who find themselves in a relationship with a gaslighter, the primary goal is not resolution, but self-protection. The golden rule is to refuse to engage in their arguments. Gaslighters, they thrive on getting a strong emotional reaction. Sidebar: if I'm describing somebody we may all know of, drop it in the chat. But again, gaslighters thrive on getting strong emotional reaction by withholding that pleasure. An individual can rob them of their power. One effective counter strategy is to use prepared scripts and stick to them, refusing to veer from short, non-emotional statements like, "That is not how I experienced that situation," or "I'm not going to talk to you about that." The most powerful tool is to document reality. Keep a private record of conversations and events, like in a journal or a diary or a screenshot. Tangible reference points to counter the gaslighter's manipulation, and allow that individual to trust that what they wrote back then is true, regardless of what they may be told now. I'm gonna give y'all some warning signs. If the discussion is veering off track, the escalation into personal attacks, and there's a lack of resolution after arguments, that's they kitchen sinking, y'all. Once they bringing up a list of all the past, and they got unresolved grievances and unrelated issues, during we arguing about one thing, you talking about everything else. You talking about the argument we had 2 years ago, something that we supposed to be under the bridge. That's the kitchen sink. You got to set boundaries and use the I statements to redirect the conversation and acknowledge past grievances with a promise to revisit them later. That's why I say, hey, it's overwhelming when we have to go over past issues while dealing with current ones. We need to revisit that later, but let's address this for now. You know what I mean? You got to redirect the conversation back to where it needs to be. If they denying that they did something, or something was said, or something was, or they start attacking your credibility and making you feel like you crazy or you overly sensitive or something, they gaslight. They using deliberate psychological manipulation tactics to make you question your own reality and memories and your sanity. And again, you refuse to engage. You got to use short and factual scripts and privately document events and conversations so you can preserve your version of reality. Because you know how they say there's your side, their side, and then there's the truth. often people use that very premise to make their own versions of the truth. You know what I mean? Outside of just how motherfuckers are, you experienced it one way, and you went through a situation, and you want to paint it because, like I say, if you gaslight, if you catch a secret, if you're disingenuous, if you're aiming to have a conflict that won't be resolved healthily, you gonna put extras on it. You know what I mean? Make it seem like you gonna gaslight. I don't want to get too far off on a tangent. Now, why the skills of listening and empathy? To Fa said what it do. Now, why the skills of listening and empathy and effective communications are universally applicable? The context in which conflict unfolds is a deeply personal and often shaped by cultural and historical factors. A truly comprehensive blueprint for conflict resolution must therefore expand beyond the individual to consider broader community and cultural lenses. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the third side, but in most disputes, the focus is placed on two antagonistic parties, but a broader and often more powerful perspective is offered by William Urie's concept of third side. The third side is a community, family, or social context within which a conflict unfolds, and it can play a pivotal role in its resolution. The third side, it's not taking a side, but it adopts a perspective of common ground to support the process of dialogue and work towards the solution that satisfies the needs of all parties and involved and the larger society. Ultimately, the third side can take on various practical roles to help prevent, resolve, or contain conflict. There's the mediator, a neutral party who facilitates dialogue, helps conflicting parties find common ground, and provides a space for productive conversation. And there's the teacher, a person who shares knowledge about the dynamics of conflict and promotes understanding through educational and personal development. Then there's the healer. The healer is someone who nurtures injured relationships and facilitates a process of reconciliation, which may involve making amends, offering restoration, and providing forgiveness. The idea of the third side is not a foreign academic concept, but it's a universal theory that provides a framework and language for a deeply rooted cultural practice. A speaker describes this process. Wait a minute, y'all. Hold on 1 second. My bad. All right. So, my research, it points to a powerful example of this dynamic in an African community. Y'all bear with me. I'm getting fucking messages out the blue, out the crazy. All right, so yeah, man, we want to we don't wanna resolve conflicts through ostracization. We want to use arbitration and reintegration. I know them seem like it's a big word, but they not. All I'm saying is the same way that on the individual level, people on the individual level, you got people who tend to want to make the conflict, or they conflict just to conflict. And like I say, the tactics and tools that we would use on the individual level would similarly apply in the community realm, where conflict resolution also arises. Especially in our communities, community conflicts often culminates, in terrible ways. And this is where we want to establish new ways. So we want to move, just follow me, I'm gonna be a loose with it. But a speaker from bear with me. All right. So my provided research points to a powerful example of this dynamic in an African community, where disputes were not resolved through ostracization, but through a communal process of arbitration and reintegration. A speaker from the research describes a process that moves from a head man to a chief, who acts as an arbitrator, ensuring that the punishment may be meted out. The individual is always reintegrated into the community. This is a direct parallel to the third side's role as a mediator and protector, focused on reconciliation and community cohesion. The community acts as an inherent third side, with community leaders and religious congregations making public commitments to address issues and facilitate reconciliation through practices like sharing stories and public education campaigns. This reframing of the third side is essential, as it validates the tradition of collective action and communal responsibility that has always been present within our communities. It provides a powerful, culturally resonant approach to peace building, like I'm saying. To shift the cultural lens on conflict further, conflict is not a monolithic experience, and its expression is filtered through a cultural lens. The patterns of communication learned within a culture can profoundly impact how disagreements are perceived and handled. The research on my research on cross-cultural conflicts highlights the importance of cultural competency. One key area of difference is in communication style. While some people may have a more emotive style of communication and use different nonverbal cues than others, such as more frequent eye contact when speaking, or a preference for closer physical proximity. These behaviors, when viewed through a lens that can be misinterpreted as a signs of aggression or resistance or a disinterest, this leads to misunderstandings and even deeper heightened tension. Similarly, a person accustomed to a more emotionally controlled communication style might be incorrectly perceived as having no emotion at all. The importance of rapport and trust in conflict resolution is also paramount. For instance, because of the historical context, Some people may harbor a deep-seated distrust of formal mediation processes or facilitators from outside their community. This distrust is a natural and valid response to experiences where they may have felt unheard, dismissed, or prejudged. Therefore, for any conflict resolution model to be effective, it must be culturally sensitive and prioritize the building of trust and rapport to ensure that all parties feel they're being heard and are in a safe, judgment-free zone. The most vital part of any blueprint is going to be application. The skills and concepts discussed are not merely had to make sure I was still live, y'all. Y'all still there? They just told me I went offline. I hope y'all still there. But that don't stop. We still record. The most vital part of, like I say, is going to be the application. So I'm going to give you some role-playing scenarios. Role-playing is a safe and controlled way to practice new skills and navigate difficult conversations without the high stakes of a real-life conflict. These scenarios will provide an opportunity to apply the principles of active listening, I statements, and managing destructive patterns in a guided environment. Try this with your partner or with the people that you interface with that value healthy, resolution skills. Not to say that you wouldn't want to do it with the people who don't, but practice it for you, take it for you, so that you can be effective with it when you go out into the world to try to implement it. Here's the first scenario. Let's say you're at a family get together. A younger family member who uses therapy speak vocabulary like toxic and no capacity, narcissist, is met with a dismissive comment from an elder relative who grew up with an avoidant or explosive conflict style. So now you have two roles, the younger person and the older person. The younger person is to use I statements to express hurt without escalating. And the older relative is to use active listening to validate the younger person's feelings, even if they don't understand the vocabulary. Like I say, I feel like and it's gonna be because oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, but there can be times when younger people misapply terms and shit, and an older person ain't hearing them because they ain't talking about shit. But that's not what we're talking about in this capacity. Right now, we're talking about that situation where a young person may know or may have more insights and understandings than someone older, and due to that experience gap, the older person may not want to give credence to what the young person is saying, even if it's valid. And like I say, that's a good scenario to practice with, maybe with your grandmother, with your mother, with your aunt, or maybe with your child, or with your grandchild, or your nephew, or your niece. And here's a scenario for the overlooked contribution. Let's say a colleague feels their significant contributions to a project have been overlooked and are not being recognized by the project manager or something. This is it's a common experience, and it's tied to feelings of being historically undervalued. So here we'll have two roles: the overlooked colleague and the manager. The colleague respectfully expresses their feelings using I statements, and the manager uses active listening to acknowledge and validate their feelings, even if they were unaware of the oversight. Scenario 3. This is where you'll deal with kitchen sink conversations. So, one individual is having a disagreement with a partner or friend who begins to bring up multiple past issues and that are related to the current problem. So you got the kitchen sinker and the listener. Listener, your job is to gently and respectfully guide the conversation back to the present issues and promise to address the other's concerns at a later agreed upon time. Now, it's important that I know. Well, I'll save that for a second, y'all. Let's go over some self-reflection prompts. Because the journey to healthy conflict begins with introspection. These questions are designed to encourage personal growth and help individuals apply the blueprint to their own lives. These are meant to be answered for an audience, but for yourself. This is for your own personal growth. What specific conflict patterns did I learn growing up? Did my family use explosive arguments or silence and side out? How has that affected my approach to conflict today? What is one thing I want to change about my approach to conflict? And how can I reframe conflict from a battle to an opportunity for intimacy and growth? What would it be like to walk in the other person's shoes? What might be the core concerns or sacred values they're defending? What specific actions have I taken in the past that may have inadvertently escalated a conflict? And what could I have done differently? What is the goodness in the person I am in conflict with, and how will I show them that I see it? These are questions for deep introspect, and it'll ground you even greater in healthy conflict resolutions. I think if you engage with that alone, man, you damn near don't even you could come to all the other conclusions on your of how to properly interface in conflicts like someone who wants to get to a healthy place should. In conclusion, conflict it's not an endpoint to be feared, but a natural part of human connection to be navigated with skill and compassion. The blueprint for healthy conflict it's not something one is born with. It's something that is intentionally built and practiced over time. The goal is not to eliminate disagreements, but to transform them from a source of hostility and pain into a pathway for deeper understanding and intimacy. By embracing foundational skills like active listening, empathy, and the use of I statements, and by understanding how to counter destructive patterns like kitchen sinking and gaslighting, individuals can change the very nature of their relationships. Furthermore, by recognizing the vital role of the community as a third side, and by approaching all interactions with cultural competency and trust, individuals can move beyond inherited ineffective patterns and into a more collaborative and healing form of communication. The ultimate goal is to repair. It's not to destroy, and to stay in the room even when things get uncomfortable. By applying these principles, you can begin to build a new, healthier blueprint for your relationships. Relationships is founded in truth. That good arguments, they're not about winning or being right. It's about finding your way back to one another. And the reason, like I said, the reason we did last week's episode on the manipulation of rhetoric, and the reason why we're doing today's episode on healthy conflict resolution, I want to make sure, because as Sunshine Baby said earlier, if you come from, I don't want to say a good home or a good background, because I don't want to say if you don't have good conflict resolution skills that you just come from a bad. I don't want to say that, but I do want to say if you don't come from a household that, or a place or a community, or that promotes and teaches healthy conflict resolution or constructive conflict resolution, you're gonna be on the losing stick just in life. It's a hindrance. It affects your, like I say, because you become a victim to all of the, either a victim of them or a victim of all the tactics of destructive communication, or you become a perpetuator of these tactics, and it doesn't bring us any closer together. Where and I think that shit is by design, but I don't want to go off on a tangent into that. I just want to say that healthy, constructive conflict resolution is the path to a healthier community. It's a path to a healthier life, less mental stress. It's just so many components, and like I say, this is where we're going next week. So last week we talked about how logical fallacies and rhetoric is used to manipulate and used to propagate BS ideologies. And this week we're unpacking healthy conflict resolutions, and next week we're going to tie this together a little bit more and show why it's important. And I do need to say that this is not a one-sided blueprint, and by that I mean this isn't something to where I know this information, and if I use this information, I'll win. Now I can have healthy. Now I can resolve all my shit healthily. It's not gonna work out. I hardly see it working like that. Understand the core principles, the essence of it first. Get that grounded, and then, because at the core of it, it's about healthy communications and bring, like I say, coming together, not going apart. So once you fully understand what constructive conflict resolution is about, now you can find ways to get the partner, get the person that you are conflicting with on the same page as this level ground that you mentally have established. And like I said, last week's episode was so that you know clearer and better when people are trying to manipulate you or trying to stray away from, genuine conversations. With that, what needs to be noted is that you can't change everybody. So if you can't get an individual to, I hate to say can't, but if it's extremely difficult to the point where it diminishing returns on why you would even pursue it, to have a healthy resolution to your conflict. If they don't want a healthy resolution, then they desire an unhealthy resolution. And today's episode does not tackle that. At that point, you're moving in a different direction. And you know what? I think we'll go there next week to tackle that, because at that point, you have an enemy. You have an adversary. And healthy conflict resolution there, while it may be possible, you have more ground to tear down and break through. But next week, so far, but even with next week, you'll be better able to identify individuals who are intentionally stirring up bullshit, trying to conflicting with you, starting problems with you that you can't resolve. And we'll go through how to work through those as well. But for this is for the individuals who seek healthy resolutions, and like I say, it's a two-way street. Both of y'all have to agree to actively listen. Both of y'all have to agree not to use logical fallacies. Both of y'all have to agree to come to the table with empathy and openness and understanding, and a desire, not just a desire to be understood, but a desire to understand. And it's 10:20, y'all. We've been on for about an hour. And before I do that, we do need to say, buy my book, y'all. Go buy my book. You ain't even gotta buy it. You ain't even gotta buy it. Just go read the motherfucker. It's on Kindle Unlimited. It's free for another 30-some days or something like that. But if you want to own it outright, it's $2.99 on Amazon. 1 second. There we go. Yeah, that's my book. Go buy my book. I got my motherfucking soundboards wrong. All right, it's time for me to get off of here. I'm flipping all over the place, man. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And if you haven't already, hit that like button. If you appreciated the message you got here today, subscribe to the channel, hop in the comments, tell me what you took away from it. Tell me if you disagree and where. It's the mob, not the wob. And until next time, we gone. My black.